people in town didn't like to talk about the house at the end of Willow Creek Road. If you asked about it, you got the same answer every time: a shrug, a quick look away, and some mumbled excuse to change the subject. Nobody really said what happened there. But everyone knew. It had been empty for over 70 years. The story, or what was left of it, was that in 1942, a 16-year-old girl named Emily Harrow murdered her parents and younger brother in their sleep. They said she used an axe. They said she laughed while doing it, but the part that really scared people was what happened afterward. She didn't run, she didn't hide. She sat in the front yard until morning, covered in blood, whispering to the wind like she was waiting for something to whisper back. That was the last time anyone in town saw her. Some said she died in an institution. Some said she was taken by something worse. When Robert and Emma moved in, they didn't know any of that. They were new in town, just married, looking for a cheap place to start their life. The house was a bargain, almost suspiciously so, but they were too excited to care. They saw potential. High ceilings, a huge yard, plenty of space for kids someday. They signed the papers without hesitation. No one warned them. They moved in on a gray Thursday afternoon. Rain had just stopped, and the air felt thick, like it hadn't breathed in years. Emma swore the house looked like it was holding its breath, like it had been waiting. She brushed it off. Just nerves. New house, new life, new everything. The first night was quiet, almost too quiet. No cars outside, no crickets, no wind. Just the sound of the old wood settling, the kind of creaks and groans that made you feel like the house had a voice of its own. Emma had trouble sleeping. Around 3 a.m. she sat up suddenly, convinced she'd heard a whisper right next to her ear. When she turned on the light, nothing was there. Robert snored softly beside her. In the morning, she found her necklace was gone. The one her grandmother had given her. It had been on the nightstand, right next to her phone. She looked everywhere, under the bed, behind the dresser, even in her suitcase. It was just gone. Robert told her not to worry. Old houses eat stuff, he joked. We'll find it eventually. But they didn't. Over the next few days, other things started disappearing. A set of keys, a coffee mug, one of Emma's socks. Always small, always random, always gone. It was easy to laugh it off at first. The house is a thief, Emma joked one morning. Robert smiled, but his eyes didn't. Then came the sounds. At first, it was just footsteps upstairs. Light, careful ones, always after midnight. Robert would check, but there was never anything there. Then it was the voices' soft murmurs behind the walls, too low to make out words, but loud enough to freeze your blood if you were alone in the hallway. Emma started keeping the lights on at night. She didn't tell Robert, not at first. She didn't want to sound crazy, but then he started hearing things too. One night, he woke up gasping, swearing he saw a girl standing at the foot of their bed. Pale face, dark hair, no eyes. She was gone before he could blink. By the end of the first week, the house didn't feel like theirs anymore. It felt like they were guests, and someone or something was watching. The second week was worse. Robert stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt something watching him from the corner of the room. Not a presence exactly, but a weight in the air that leaned toward him like invisible pressure. Emma tried to stay calm, but she had started hearing things too. The whispers were louder now, and sometimes they said her name. Once, while brushing her teeth, she heard a voice behind her in the mirror. It was soft like a child, and it said, "Emma, come play." She turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. The mirror fogged up as if someone had just breathed on it. Robert became distant. He barely spoke, and when he did, it was short and cold. He spent most of his time in the basement. He said he was fixing the boiler, but Emma noticed he never fixed anything. He would just sit down there in the dark for hours. One day she asked him what he was doing. He stared at her like he didn't know who she was. Then he smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was crooked and wrong, and his eyes didn't match his face. Emma started sleeping in the guest room. The master bedroom felt heavy, like something else had moved in. One night, she woke up to the sound of laughter. It was high-pitched and distant, like it came from inside the walls. When she pressed her ear to the drywall, she heard breathing. Slow and steady breathing, like someone was asleep on the other side. The next morning, she found the word "mine" scratched into the mirror. Not written, but carved deep into the glass. Robert said it must have already been there. But Emma had cleaned that mirror herself the day they moved in, and it was spotless. She tried to convince herself it was all in her head. Maybe stress, maybe nerves, maybe the house was just old. But then came the dreams. Every night she saw Emily. Not as a 16-year-old girl, but as something older and broken. Her skin was pale, her eyes were black, and her hands were stained with blood. She never spoke. She only stared. Emma woke up gasping night after night, soaked in sweat with her heart pounding in her ears. She began to notice the shadows. They didn't move the way they should. They bent and shifted in ways that didn't match the furniture or the light. One night, while washing dishes, she saw a shadow move across the kitchen behind her. When she turned around, no one was there. The plate slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. The house felt colder with each passing day. Every room had that feeling like someone was standing behind you just out of sight. And no matter where they went, it followed. It was no longer about missing objects or strange noises. It was something else now, something deeper, something alive. By the third week, Robert was barely recognizable. He looked thinner, like the house was draining something from him. His eyes were dark and sunken, his skin pale like paper. Emma tried to talk to him, but he rarely responded, and when he did, his voice sounded distant, like it came from somewhere far behind his face. She found him one night standing in the hallway staring at the wall. When she called his name, he didn't turn. She touched his shoulder, and he flinched hard like she had burned him. He looked at her with a face full of confusion and fear. Then, without saying a word, he walked away and locked himself in the basement again. That same night, Emma finally saw her. She had been lying in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The air was cold and still the way it always was now. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement in the doorway. When she turned her head, a girl was standing there. Long black hair draped over her shoulders, wearing what looked like an old nightgown stained with something dark. Her skin was so pale it almost glowed, and her eyes were pure black like wet stones. She didn't move. She didn't blink, she just stared. Emma froze. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her body wouldn't move. Her chest felt tight, and her breath shallow. The girl tilted her head slowly, like she was studying her. Then she was gone. Not like she walked away, but like she blinked out of existence. Emma sat up gasping for air, her heart slamming in her chest. The next morning, Robert was already awake. He was in the kitchen cleaning a knife. When Emma asked what he was doing, he said nothing, just preparing. His voice was flat and empty. His eyes didn't look at her. They looked through her. That day, Emma searched the basement while he was out buying groceries. It was darker than she remembered, colder too. The light switch didn't work, so she used a flashlight. The floor was covered in dust, and the air smelled like damp wood and rust. In the far corner, she found something carved into the wall. A name, Emily, over and over again. And below that, a sentence scratched deep into the brick. She's still here. Emma backed away slowly, her pulse pounding. As she turned to go upstairs, she heard footsteps behind her, slow and dragging like bare feet across concrete. She didn't look back. She ran. That night, Robert didn't come home. Emma stayed up waiting, but the hours passed and there was no sign of him. Around midnight, she heard the front door open and close. She rushed downstairs, but the hallway was empty. No lights, no sound. Just the faint smell of dirt and something else, something sour. She called out for Robert but got no answer. Then from the top of the stairs, she heard a whisper, "Mine." She turned slowly. Emily was standing at the end of the hallway. Her head tilted, her arms limp at her sides, her eyes locked on Emma. And behind her, just barely visible, was Robert. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, staring straight ahead like he was sleepwalking, or worse, like he was dead on his feet. Emma took a step forward, but Emily lifted her hand, and the lights in the hallway flickered, then died. Everything went dark. The house was silent, but not empty. Emma stood in the hallway, frozen, her heart pounding in her throat. The light was gone, and the air felt thick, like it was filled with something that wasn't quite air. She could hear her own breath shaking, like it was the only sound left in the world. She took a step forward, whispering, "Robert." No answer. Another step. Still nothing. She reached for the wall, trying to find the switch, but her fingers touched only cold plaster. Behind her, something creaked. She turned. Emily was inches away. Her face was pale and lifeless, her eyes like black pits pulling everything into them. Her mouth hung open like she was trying to scream, but no sound came out. Emma stumbled back, but her body felt heavy like it was being held in place by invisible hands. The walls began to whisper. They spoke in Emily's voice, but also in dozens of other voices, all layered and overlapping. They said things Emma couldn't understand, words twisted and broken, but she felt the meaning in her bones. She wasn't meant to be here. She had taken something that didn't belong to her. She was trespassing on something ancient and cruel. Robert stepped forward from the darkness. His eyes were blank. His arms hung at his sides, and there was blood on his hands. Emma reached for him, crying, begging him to wake up, but he didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just whispered one word, "Stay." Emily raised her hand. The house groaned. The floor buckled. The air collapsed inward like it was being sucked into a void. Emma screamed, but it was silent now, like the house had swallowed her voice. The walls cracked. The ceiling split, and then she felt the cold. Not wind, not air, something else. Something that reached inside her and pulled. Emma dropped to her knees. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was Emily's face inches from her own, smiling. When they found the house weeks later, it was empty again. The furniture was covered in dust. The mirrors were shattered. There was no sign of Robert, no sign of Emma. Just one word scratched into the bedroom wall.